Roll for initiative. So, commissioned review, and this one of a whole series. The Legend of Vox Machina. So, this is an animated show on Amazon Prime. It is a fantasy setting. It is fairly comedic in tone, especially at the front end. And it is based off of Critical Role, a D&D podcast empire at this point, which I have never listened to or watched much of. I know a little about it. I know their theme song. That's cool. But it's not one that I've ever gotten into. So I don't have existing investment in these characters, because this is based off, I believe it was their first campaign that Critical Role did. And so I have no thoughts going in, neither good nor bad, no biases or things that I am already automatically in favor of. So nothing like that going in. I'm going to take it as I see it. And by the time it was done, I did enjoy it. It took a little while for me to get there, though. So there's a couple of things that make the front end of this a little bit of a slog. The first thing is that it kind of suffers from, what the first half of the first season of the Harley Quinn animated show suffered from, which was, look at this, we can swear and we can do violence, and let's swear and do violence. Check it out, we're gonna swear and do violence. And there's plenty of ways to just have it happen, but it feels much more crammed in just to be like, yeah, swearing and violence in a cartoon. Yeah, I know this isn't really a new thing, and it's a little too into it. First few episodes of Torchwood, another good example. Look how adult we can be. Yeah, adult in the most sophomoric way possible. Great. Immature maturity. Ugh. So that was a problem initially. Another thing is, and this problem persisted, at least with some characters, a bit longer. And that is, you can tell some of this originated from improvised material. Now, this itself is not improvised. This is scripted. It's based off the campaign. It's not like they just took the recordings of the campaign and animated around it. That's not what happened. But you can still tell, if you know enough about improv, basically, that some of these characters have their origins in an improv setting. And what I mean by that is, when you are doing an improvised thing, and that's what D&D is, especially if you're doing it as a podcast or as a stream, because and I'm speaking from experience, I'm on a D&D stream. It's called Quill and Sword. It's on Partridge Quill on Twitch every 2 weeks on Thursdays. Go check that out. There's also a back catalog of episodes at Quill and Sword here on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description for that. Now that I'm done plugging my own thing, my point is that when you have characters that are built to be improvised with, because that D&D is improvised storytelling, you are generally going to deal with, oftentimes, fairly simplified characters who have a handful of go-to responses to situations, because that makes it much easier, much faster to do something with them on the fly if you know pretty much how they're going to respond to most things, whether it be sarcastic comment, quip, flirt, smack somebody, or want to kill things, whatever it may be. If you have that be the core thing that they do, it makes improvising with them much easier. And it's more forgivable in an improvised setting as well, because when you're making it up on the fly, you don't have time to think and come up with this deep analytical reason as to why your character is going to do what they do. Instead, you just go, this character is always horny, so he's got to hit on somebody. It just makes the story flow better. And in an improvised setting, that's fine. But this is now a scripted show. And some of the characters aren't built to work scripted. They are too shallow. And they do the same thing too often. The big one for me, Scanlan, the Bard, he really tried my patience. And he didn't really grow on me. The show as a whole did. He really didn't. Even by the end, I still didn't like him. I'm like, dude, stop making everything about your dick and stop doing everything horny. And like, look, I don't have a problem with horny bards. I play a horny bard. I don't have a problem with it, but it's just that it's the epitome of what I'm talking about. No matter what goes on, his response is to flirt with it, reference his dick. Like, that's just what he does in response to everything. And it got real old real quick. Again, especially in a scripted setting where it's not as acceptable to just do that all the time. And it can be done well. It probably was even done well in the original campaign, but it's real annoying here. Grog the Barbarian suffers from that a little bit because, he's dumb. So he'll say something that reveals the fact that he's dumb and he wants to drink and or hit things. He just had a slightly more endearing personality, I think, partially to do with his relationships with other characters, particularly with Pike. That helped him work a little bit better. Whereas Scanlan, like 3/4 of the characters seemed as annoyed with him as I was. And the one who seemed to have the most affection for him was kind of breaks off from the party for a good chunk of it. So if I was gonna have more affection for him as a character because of his relationships, the one that would have built that just isn't in play for too much of it. But other than that, and that is a problem that lessens for most of the characters, other than a little bit Grog and definitely Scanlan. But the rest feel like they acquire more depth and they don't suffer from this problem quite as much. I would say actually largely the show gets better the less jokes it makes and the less sort of hung up on the fact that like, hey, we can show boobs and we can say the F word. Woo! Once it kind of gets over that and actually knuckles down to tell its story, it's a pretty good story. And it's a pretty dark story at times. And as this thing gets dark and gets serious, it gets way better. It doesn't lose the humor completely, but it becomes an undercurrent as opposed to the thing that's undermining a lot of what's going on, which is what it is at the front end a bit. And as a result, by the end, it was actually giving me a little bit of Castlevania vibes, the animated series, the Netflix series. And I love Castlevania. Absolutely love it. But it was giving me those vibes by the end. Dark, dangerous, violent, but with some characters who are able to still have or be fun. And yeah, that's a balance I really enjoy. The other thing that it reminded me of, it couldn't help but remind me of, was the comic series Rat Queens, which I like. I'm going to hesitate to actually recommend because one of the co-creators had a lot of issues. He was arrested for domestic abuse, and the other co-creator was unfortunately willing to continue to work with him after that, even though like he didn't come back and work on the comic directly, but the two of them have tried to continue to work together. So I don't even know how I feel about the other co-creator at this point. But because of those reasons, I'm not sure I'm actually comfortable recommending Rat Queens, but it gives me a similar vibe if you've ever read those comics or those graphic novels, where, these are just mercenary characters. They're here for a good time, and they go out and kill things because that's how they make money so that they can drink. And I do think Rat Queens hit its stride and its balance better earlier than Vox Machina does. But Vox Machina is kind of getting there, again, by the end of the season. And there is going to be more. And I will actually be looking forward to future seasons. Because if they can keep the balance that they were striking by the end of this, with the darker moments, especially with characters like Percy, who I think was a very well done character. He started out kind of generically brooding, but he gets a lot of depth. And there's some interesting twists. There's also some very predictable twists, but they're still played off well enough. I actually was having a lot of fun with this by the end, even though it starts out a little bit teeth grinding for me. And even though some of the characters I never fully warmed to, there's enough of them that I did that it was worth powering through anyways. And by the time it was done, I just felt good about this. So yeah, Legend of Vox Machina. Rough start, got there in the end. Have you seen this? What did you think about it? Do you listen to Critical Role? Do you listen to Quill and Sword? Do you have any other D&D podcasts or streams to recommend? I will recommend Improvised Weapons. It was a podcast. It's completed. It's 150 episodes. It's real good, though. And yes, full disclosure, I have personal friends who are on that. But anyways, whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon was how I was commissioned to actually review this. If you want to commission me to review something, you can do it through that. Or you can support me at any tier and get some kind of perk. But even if you're not up for that, like, share, subscribe, help me out as well. But even if you aren't feeling that right now, it's okay. Take a relaxed attitude around here so you can just come on back next time you need a break. End of the video, so I gotta shout out my top patrons. Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfulla, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Angus Bjarnason, Melinda Walters, Imudelki, The Oath of Boyd, Katoria, Toy Lowly, Becky Sparks, Fernambulax the Poodle, Zach, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Tim Price, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, and Brendan LaRose. Thanks for your support. If you want to hear me probably mispronounce your name as well, check out the rewards on the Patreon. How you doing there?